Even men at the top of their game find themselves wanting more from life. Whether it's more meaning, unshakable confidence, a bigger impact, more money, deeper love, a hotter sex life, or a powerful legacy. Find out how good your life can be on this episode of Man Alive. Also, did you know there's a skill many men never learn that ends up seriously limiting your professional success and satisfaction in your love and sex life? I put together a free guide to explain this unknown skill and give you exactly what you need to use it today. Get it by heading over to ShanaJamesCoaching.com or text the word ALIVE, A-L-I-V-E, to 44144. That's 44144. You'll also get access to Man Alive outtakes, raw footage, and bonus videos you can only get there. Hello, and welcome to this episode of Man Alive. I'm excited to be here today, and I have a powerful and, what would I call you, Mark? I would call you powerful and like a future thinking man who really values the inner world of transformation and the outer world of success and impact. So, Mark Nicolson, thank you for being here today.
Thank you. I'm really glad to be here.
Yeah, and we're going to talk about having a bigger impact through connection, right? Through deepening and developing connection, and the past or previous models for success and for creating or building businesses and movements in the world have often been more individually focused, and Mark's work is a little taboo in a way, where he really works to connect leaders and people who are doing either similar work or people, in a company who are the leaders and actually setting the company culture. So let me give you a bit of an intro, and then we'll dive into our topic. Mm-hmm. Mark started in investment banking in London and Hong Kong about 25 years ago, and went through what he would describe as a spiritual awakening, which I'd love to hear about. Mm-hmm. And since then has been consulting and teaching on transformative leadership in organizations and with individuals. And initially he was a partner in Alexander, the UK pioneering of executive coaching. And in the midst, took a 2-year sabbatical in the late 90s to manage the garden at Esalen, which inspired his work and philosophy. So his clients are mostly entrepreneurs, social change visionaries, recently including IDEO, Irvine, New York, Leadership Network, as well as Desmond Tutu and his family foundation. He has an MBA from Stanford, an MA in classical literature from Oxford, an MA in psychology from Meridian University. So you've done a lot of training. Yep. And I love that you actually spent a couple years managing a garden also. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yep. So thank you for being here and for taking the deeper work that you're doing, the spiritual awakening, the awareness into places where people can have a bigger impact.
Yeah.
So let's talk about connection in these, convening movements, in these groups of leaders. Let's just dive right in, right? How do you actually make it safe for people to connect in this pretty vulnerable context?
Yeah. Well, so I think the simple thing is that it comes down to the credibility of the convener. So if you have someone who's convening, who people know and want to work with and want to learn more from, that is ultimately what it is that people will gather around. So whether that is the manager of talent development in a fintech startup, or whether it's the executive director of the catalyst of a movement, or whether it's when I'm gathering people for my year-long coaching training, there is something important in those conveners that people want to gather around. So that's the place that it starts from. You've got to have the credibility of the convener, and then invite them into into working collectively together in 3 different dimensions, both at a personal level, a group level, and at a project or a change in the world level.
Okay, so personal, and then the group between the personal, and then actually taking it out into the world and having an impact out there.
Yes. So they need to be invited in. So the convener invites them in, but with the understanding that they are coming there to do their work. So, for example, the work I'm doing at the moment in the Central Valley, where I'm supporting both established and emerging leaders to create the next level of success for the Central Valley. They want to come together because they want to meet these other incredible emerging leaders. But for us, that they have to be willing to join that program. They have to be able to say that they want to do their own work. And in particular, in this case, it means doing their own work around race and equity and gender.
Can you describe a little bit more, like, okay, so someone comes with this idea that they're going to do their own work and convene together. What are they actually, how does that work happen?
Well, we will have a series of retreats at which we will ask people to tell their story about why they do what they do and what it is that they're passionate about what they do, and then create projects that they work on together that are going to make a difference in the county. But all the time, we are asking them to reflect on how what we're doing is impacted or affected by taking an equity lens.
An equity lens, you said?
Equity lens, yeah. So asking people to think about where is it that equity is playing an important part in their work. What do they know about that? What are they aware about that? And having enough difference in the room that there are sparks of there are ways in which people don't see how it is that other people see the world, and that can create conflict. So
is part of the connection the willingness to actually engage in that conflict? You guide them through the conflict?
Yes, absolutely. It's the willingness to name when they're triggered, to name when they're feeling defensive, and to talk about, why they might be feeling defensive or why they might be feeling triggered, but also constantly giving people a logic context about why having conversations about equity is so difficult.
And is that, maybe we should back up a little bit too and go into, what do you see as possible, right? When you bring people together to help them connect in these deeper, more vulnerable and more personal ways, even if it's, to develop a city or to build a company, right? What becomes possible? And then I want to hear, what the other foundations are. It sounds like equity is a big one.
Right. Yeah, it depends on what kind of is the edgy theme that's preventing people from really getting connected to each other. But that's what it is in the Central Valley. That's the case in a lot of different places, but that's particularly showing up where I'm doing that work there. So what's possible is actually almost impossible to describe, because it's very hard to imagine what's possible if you haven't experienced it. Maybe you've read case studies elsewhere, but generally what happens is, for example, what's possible is you can have, as we had in our last cohort, you can have the chief of police working with local community organizers to develop a new way in which police recruits get trained about how to understand what the equity issues are in the county.
Wow, that's powerful.
So, but to get to that point, you have to be able to have both sides being willing to hear how the other side, what the other side's points of view are, and some of those are pretty entrenched. So,
I would imagine some of those are pretty entrenched.
Yep. So, you end up being able to have conversations when people fundamentally respect each other and can see why and understand somebody else's life story and the choices that they have made, and the incredible courage with which people have led their lives. When people have a chance to truly see that about each other,
wow,
they can start to have different kinds of conversation.
Yeah, I mean, that's really moving to think about, right? People from all different backgrounds who would have these preconceived ideas about each other and judgments and, different senses of entitlement or whatever that may be, to actually be willing to come together and listen to someone else, whether it's someone in the same company or whether it's someone, from a totally different walk of life. I mean, that is powerful work.
Yep. And it's, and in organizations, there's often different issues or different challenges that people are wrestling with, which is often much more about getting shit done than it is about, how do we solve particular economic or political challenges.
Right. And when you do the work in a company where it's about getting shit done, what would you say, how does connection become a catalyst for that?
Well, interestingly, what I'm finding is really, to some extent, the only thing that motivates people is the possibility of getting change in the organization to happen, because they want, rightly so, they want the organization to be incredibly successful, and they want to be a part of that success and to feel their own sense of accomplishment, as we all do. But so our focus is on, how do we design projects that are going to make a difference in this organization? And then once we're working on the project, let's get to have some conversations about how we're impacting each other. And let's talk about how the team is working, and let's talk about the part that we're each playing, and whether we're all or not bringing the best of ourselves, or where we're getting in our own way. So supporting those conversations to happen about, where are we not showing up with integrity? Where are we not bringing all that we could? That becomes possible and valuable and wished for if you're creating a culture in which reflecting on how we do things around here begins to get valued.
Well, yeah, and I know I've been part of organizations and businesses where this is done, but they've been small, and it's some of the companies I've started or companies that I've been a part of where there are 5 to 10 of us who really value personal growth and transformation and having an impact. And I imagine a lot of the bigger companies you work with, that's not always the case.
Right.
And so
and they haven't been hired.
It hasn't went.
They haven't been hired for that. They haven't been hired on the understanding that I'm going to really work on my leadership capabilities. There's an implicit understanding a lot of the time, but it's not necessarily explicit. So when we invite people to gather to work on various projects together, there can be, a little bit of a sense of this is being foisted on them rather than something that they've already chosen.
Yeah. Or, oh shit, am I going to lose my job? If I start talking about ways that I'm not in integrity or ways that I'm not bringing my best, is that going to cost me my position? And how do you work with that? Yeah.
Well, so I think what it has come down to for me, and this is just from my own, I know it's my own particular lens, but I do feel more and more that it's a universalizable idea, which is that what I have seen really puts people on the defensive and really destroys groups is when you have somebody in the group who in some way is attacking the process that we're in. Whether they could either be attacking, the person who's facilitating or leading the group, they could be attacking other people in the group, or they could be attacking the idea of what they're doing. And so what I really try and help people to be courageous around is having vulnerable conversations about where they know that they want to learn and where they feel like they're not at their best.
Yeah.
And as long as we can have those conversations and someone doesn't attack it for being touchy-feely or not getting anything done,
Mm-hmm.
then more and more people will have the courage to step in and talk about what their own learning edges are.
Mm-hmm.
And then the work can get done. But if you have people who are shutting it down or who are deflecting or draining energy out of the group, then it's really, really hard to do it. And I think the moment where I learned the most as a coach or facilitator of doing this kind of work
Mm-hmm.
was a group where we spent a day where everybody introduced themselves in really profound ways, and we gave everybody feedback about how they'd introduced themselves. And then the 12th person in the room, who strangely was 12th in the lottery of, the order of how people were going to introduce themselves,
Mm-hmm.
he just attacked the whole process with his introduction. And then we happened to go to a break, and during the break, after a lot of thinking and talking with the client and a colleague, I suddenly became really clear that we had to ask the guy to leave.
Uh-huh.
And ask him to play a different role in the project,
mm-hmm.
Which it turned out he was happy to do. And the rest of the group was so thankful that we had made that decision. And that group happened 6 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
I helped facilitate 2 3-day retreats, and that group is still meeting 6 years later.
Wow. Wow. Well, interesting. I mean, and a little bit sad to hear that he left. Well, I'm not questioning your decision, but I'm also curious if you've had groups where somebody wasn't on board with the process, and then, there was a process that you led or something that happened that actually helped them get there or see the benefit of what you were doing.
Yeah. Yeah, actually, I'm thinking of a group that I did that I've been doing over the last few months with a pretty large startup. And there was somebody who came who after day one was like, still in the prove it to me mode.
Uh-huh.
And through, really a serendipitous combination of different conversations that I and my client in the organization had with me, and then actually there was this activity that we did. It was a little competitive team activity that we did, where he was incredibly successful in one of the teams,
mm-hmm.
and suddenly he was a different person. And he went from being a skeptic to being like, I'm really on board with this, and he realized how much he was learning.
Huh.
But there were a couple of
it didn't necessarily seem like it was because you said he won a competition, or somehow that helped him actually get that he was learning something.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's so interesting. It reminds me, because I have a 6-year-old son.
Yeah.
Where I'm like, oh my gosh, if he's not winning, right now, and I'm trying to figure out how to navigate this, but if he's not winning, he is not interested in.
Right.
So reminds me how we're all walking around as adults with, these inner children, you could call them, who are kind of running the show in certain ways.
Yeah. Well, it does. I mean, it really can bring out the best in us to have little competitions.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And time limits on when we're going to get stuff done and create something, and it sparks our imagination in a different way.
Yeah. I'm wondering to make this a little more concrete, what maybe one of the most impactful projects you've worked on, or what's the, this doesn't have to be the biggest, but what change have you seen, and what's the impact you've seen as a result of the processes you take people through?
Well, it's I have to say that it's at a point where I feel like every time we pull together these groups,
mm-hmm.
And if people truly make the choice, which basically happens every time, truly make the choice to not just learn for themselves and to get the projects done for, whether it's the organization or the county or the movement, that they are really changed by feeling how important they are to a group. So I worked for about 10 years with an organization called Bali, which is based in Oakland now, and they have been the catalyst and convener of the localist movement, which is the movement that advocates for an alternative to capitalism through investing locally, through buying locally, through understanding, through not sending our capital to Wall Street, but through developing shared ownership, and through an orientation towards equity, and thereby creating a different way to build and grow businesses. And we ran a series of so far 4 cohorts of leaders, 2-year programs. And what's happened to the localist movement is that it really has become a national movement that many, many people have heard of, and people have become more and more aware of the importance and impact, not just of buying locally, but investing locally. And that in putting our money in Wall Street, and foundations, for example, putting their money in Wall Street is just a way of investing in the problem and perpetuating the problem, as opposed to investing locally. So that whole movement has grown as a result of building these really deep connections between the leaders who come to those, who have been a part of those cohorts.
Yeah, that's powerful. And I realize, you gave an example before, but it's another great way to see, this is what happens when, as you said before, people are committed to transformation of themselves and then within the group. And then, that actually serves, I think, their mission to be more solid or to be more stable, right? Again, having been part of companies where I started a company once with 8 different people and we're no longer a company, but for many, many years, probably almost a decade, it was like, because we were willing to do some inner work and actually be vulnerable and real with each other, there was not a lot of breakdown. There was challenges, but there wasn't a lot of breakdown. And I've seen, companies or movements fall as a result of personal conflicts. I'm sure you have as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It takes, it's why for so long, doing that kind of, being that open with others about where you feel insecure or unsure of yourself, or where you feel pissed, or whatever it is, whatever part of yourself that you're not proud of, it's taken a long time to get to the point where people see that as courageous,
right,
as to something that needs to be marginalized or scapegoated.
Yeah. And what would you say to a man who says, oh my God, that would be amazing to be able to do something like this in my company, but I don't know if it's welcome, or I don't have a sense that, I can say that I'm pissed right now and it's going to go over very well.
Right. Well, there's this wonderful, I don't know if I'm going to remember it, there's this wonderful YouTube video that's a distillation of Charles Eisenstein's TED Talk that he did in London. I think it's called the world, the more beautiful world our hearts know is possible, or something like that. A new story of the future, it might be called, where he talks about needing to do work just at the edge of our courage, not way beyond our courage. But what I often love to help people to think through and to encourage people to do is to do something that's just at the edge of their courage, something that they know that has worked for them, but also that's something you want to introduce. So if you want to play with it, and of course you have to be attuned to whether, something is immediately going to get spat out by a culture, or how you can introduce something in a way that, will actually be received. But
right. That's what I was kind of thinking too. I mean, a lot of the work I do with people is how to communicate in a way that it's received, or in a way that it creates connection, rather than pushing someone away or, offending someone.
Yeah. I think as long as we truly understand what the motivations are of the people who we're trying to influence, that makes, if we really want to understand that rather than just have our own agenda, then that's a place to start from.
Well, it's funny. I mean, we could kind of just keep going or skip right over that, but I think that is a very powerful place to actually take a little bit of time to delve into, right? That when you actually understand the motivations of who you're talking to, that completely can, I don't know if I would say completely can change, but it creates a very different conversation. First, the willingness to actually understand the motivations, and then, to think about how to collaborate or how it could be a win-win.
Yep. And I think, that's we know that's at the core of what design thinking is. Design thinking is about, going to your users and understanding what your users need, and constantly making experiments, doing short, easy experiments that you can get feedback from your users on, so that you're constantly working with information from the people who you're, who you're hoping are going to take up your ideas. And I mean, in some ways, it's just a core principle of business, which is, if you want to create a product, then the best place to start is to understand what your users need and who your users are and what might be helpful to them, rather than just coming from, what we've known for ourselves or has been useful for us.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's huge, right? And, even in a lot of the other worlds of entrepreneurship or marketing or whatever, there's this idea of, are you actually meeting people where they are? Are you understanding them first? Or are you trying to, spoon feed them or hand them or force down their throats something that you want for them or you believe that they need, right? Versus, what is actually happening? What is the pain or the struggle or the vision of these people?
Yeah. I have a friend who trains entrepreneurs for a big a government program, and the way they start their training program is they say, go interview 50 potential users and then come back and talk to us then. And so that's where it starts. Interview 50 potential users so you really understand them.
Right. And I can see where it can be really easy to skip over that step, to just think, well, so it's going to take a long time. I know whatever kind of sense of like, well, I have a cause or I believe in it, or, I want to create this thing in the world. It takes a kind of humility to step back and say, all right, let me be informed by these people.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Is there anything else you want people to know, men to know about, how this work has impacted you, what you see as possible?
So I think that what has been really surprising to me to learn, which I didn't know because I hadn't necessarily done all of that learning about, what it is that really, particularly a lot of the organizations that I tend to work in, as opposed to the social change world, it does tend to be predominantly a male environment, is that it's just really important that they feel a sense of accomplishment, and that the what I'm supporting them to do is to feel like they're creating the world what they want to create. And so that's what I've really, I'd really try to be focused on supporting people to create what they want to create, and then seeing where it is that there are parts of themselves that they haven't necessarily been so proud of, and parts of themselves that they have been proud of that haven't been seen. That those can be brought to light, and see that so many other people are wrestling with similar questions and challenges. We just have a place where we can talk about those questions and challenges. Otherwise, we get stuck.
Yeah, that's been powerful in my work as well, to see that people often think I'm worse off, or I have more struggles, or I'm not as intelligent, or I don't have these capacities, and and then look at other people and think, well, he's got it, or he's got it together. and the reality of that being so far from the truth, you know, the way that we tend to see ourselves or see ourselves coming up short.
Yeah. Exactly.
Awesome. Well, thank you for doing this. I'm sure, you know, we could keep talking about this for a long time, and there's more, but I think this is a good place to stop. And wondering how men can find you if they want more.
Well, there's actually a good introduction to the work that I'm doing is a workshop that I'm doing this year at the beginning of April called Fast Lane to Joy, which is a workshop oriented around next paradigm leadership and some of the elements of next paradigm leadership. Which
and did you say Fast Lane to Joy?
Exactly.
With your accent, I wasn't sure.
So that's like a 2.5 day retreat up at Earthrise, just north of San Francisco. And the details of that are at my website, t12n.com. There are 12 letters between T and N in transformation, so t12n.com. That's a great introduction. And then I have a year-long intentional year of transformation that I begin each year. This year it's beginning at the end of April, and it's a 12-month program. It's a coaching training, but it's also a leadership development program or a place to get super supported around what you want to create in the year and what you want to transform in the year.
Awesome. Well, thank you for being here, and thank you for doing this work in the world. I really, believe in what you're up to. And I love that you're having the results you're having, that any doubt about the kind of inner work or that vulnerability actually, makes a difference. You're actually proving again and again, right, that it does.
Yeah. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. I'm so glad you joined us for today's episode of Man Alive. I hope it gives you a sense of what's possible and how good your life can be. If you like what you heard, I'd be so grateful for you to subscribe to Man Alive and write a quick review that helps men like you find us. And again, head over to shanajamescoaching.com/manalive to get outtakes, videos, and raw footage I only share there. These are some of the most interesting parts of these expert conversations. You can also grab your copy of The Unknown Power to accelerate your career and solidify your confidence with women, because the two are related, and I know you don't have to settle for one or the other. Join us each week for a new episode of Man Alive.